All right, everybody, welcome. This is the final week of our multi-generational families eating well. So hopefully we have learned a little bit of information. This is the wrap-up class. So we have already talked about all 9 sections, and this is just going to be a little bit of a review. Again, my name is Brandon Borum. I am a registered dietitian here in the Reno-Sparks area, and I am just happy to be able to help out as many as I can. Today is the critical part of what we are able to be funded for. And again, this funding is for next year. So we are already funded this year, but we want to be able to continue to be able to provide free education as well as fun activities like we'll talk about a little bit later on with the Dig In program. So feel free and use the QR code or the links that are provided to be able to finish your final assessment when it comes to how did this class teach you? And it's going to be very similar to the pre-assessment, just going through and seeing, did we learn anything that can help us to become a little bit healthier? And so this is just very important so that we can continue to help out as many people as possible. Special thank you to the Center for Healthy Aging. They are the ones that were allowing us to put this together to be able to help out, as well as the SNAP-Ed program to be able to provide this as a curriculum and the grant to be able to help us. And then CloverBlife is my business. We are just here to be able to help out as many people as possible as an equal opportunity provider. So today is the last class. So if you're coming in and this is your first time hearing this, I would personally recommend stopping the video and going to the very first class so that you can see from the grains and learn a little bit about what this section is going to be about all the way through, and then come back to this one so that you are able to get a full assessment of the learning throughout this program. And again, we love having people live, so there are no questions too big or too small. I don't know with YouTube if we're going to be doing the whole putting questions in the comments below and then be able to have those live answers. That probably won't be the case, but we encourage everybody to be able to come live so that you can get those answers and we'll be able to participate. Marcy will be our provider today to be able to answer, like set up those questions, and then we can play with them. This being the last class, we won't have a chance to do all the research for future classes, but according to like we did in Tuesday's class, most of the questions had already been answered throughout the last 5 weeks. So again, just as a review of the 9 sections we will be going through today, I'll just be doing a little bit of the highlights. We talked about grains in the first class. Then we went into a little bit more of the healthy snacks and heart healthy options, as well as learned a little bit more about how herbs can affect our body in ways to identify them. Then we went a little bit more into salt and into broths and how to identify when certain things are more salty or not. This is a lot more simplified class, and so definitely go and check out those ones if you want to learn more. If you've been a little less active since COVID, and you're trying to get back to more active, how to become more physically active in a safe way and what those 4 components are. We'll talk about those a little bit more today, as well as supplements, how to read and understand what kind of supplements there are out there. And then a lot of people, they struggle with understanding about fats and oils and the essentials of those, as well as what things to be aware of and maybe have a little less in our diet. And then a new concept about energy density. So we're going to be reviewing a little bit of all of these. And this is just kind of going to be not as script based, but more of just a review of everything. So going through again with the understanding a little bit more about grains. So the goal of this class was about understanding what is a whole grain, and we go into the anatomy of it and seeing what it is on the inside and out. Knowing what the benefits are when we do consume them and why would we want to have those versus not. Then learning how much we need to eat. So having a little bit is good. Having too much, not so good. So how much is a variety we want to have in our diet? So going into the first breakdown of what is a grain. And this isn't just, oh, this is wheat or this is all grains, as a just a simplified idea of what they are. And so we break down a whole grain and we see that on the outside is the bran. The bran is going to be like the cells of that wall, and it's going to be the framework of it. So it contains a little bit more fiber, and this is going to be both soluble and insoluble. So it's going to be good for our heart, but also our digestive system to help prevent things like cancer or culinary disease and stuff like that. On the inside is more like if you look at an egg, it's that in yolk. Sorry, the egg white. Whew, I have sneezed through both of these classes. and that is the endosperm. The endosperm is going to be where a lot of the carbohydrates are, as well as a little bit more of the protein. When we get more processed flours or more white rice, white grains, more white flour, what it is they're taking out the bran and they're taking out that germ, and they just leave the endosperm, which is processed sugars. So it's going to be a lot more simplified. Instead of having the fiber, think of it like if you're having fruit juice versus having a whole fruit. So if I'm having orange juice versus having a fruit, you have the fiber that slows everything down in the digestive. And so it helps to break down and be able to allow your body to process versus simple sugars. And then the germ is the yolk. That is going to be that small little section that has where all the magic comes from. That's going to be where the vitamins and minerals are housed in the grain. And again, we want to be able to get that. There's a lot of antioxidants in there, a lot of good benefits to it. And when it comes to the amount we eat, one of the recommendations, we always talk about the big five of the hand, is for women, it's 5 grains a day. We want to try to have at least half of those are whole grains. So at least 3 of our portions are going to be whole grains, versus for men, it's going to be 6. And again, 3 are whole grains. And if we look at our plate method, instead of the pyramid, we're going to be doing the plate method. That's just a little bit easier. So when we look at our plate, we want to have set it up in quarters, and a quarter of our plate is going to be grains. So if you are eating at dinner tonight and you're enjoying a wonderful meal and you're going to Olive Garden, if your entire plate is a huge thing of pasta, you've already had breadsticks and you're going to enjoy some wine and some tiramisu, this may not be the most ideal situation, but doesn't mean that you can't enjoy yourself. So maybe make only a quarter of your plate going to be that, and maybe switch up and have a variety of different foods, having that salad as a large portion of it, maybe having a little bit of fruit for dessert, having a little bit of protein on the side with your pasta might be the best way to go about that, having as a variety. Try to think about that throughout all of your meals throughout the day, so that you're trying to get the 5 for women, for the 6 for men, and have half of it going to be whole grains. And that'll be helping you out so much. This is a wonderful tool. I absolutely love this. We're going to show both 16 and 1800. So if you didn't meet the previous classes and didn't get the PDFs, this is just a great recommendation. I find that this is a helpful tool that if you are a female and you're trying to lose weight, or you're trying to maintain it, what does 1600 calories look like on a balanced day? And so look at the serving sizes is always the most helpful. Now, pay attention, the fruit, the protein, and the dairy all remain about the same. Same with the limiting of the simple sugars, as well as the saturated fats. But the only thing that changes with more calories is going to be the vegetables and the grains. And so just look at it when you go throughout a normal day. Do I have more or less than this portion size? And so for like a 2000 calorie diet, there's maybe a little bit more fruit, a little bit more protein, but really it's more the fruit and vegetables that tend to increase, but it's not by very much. And so just look at what you're doing on a regular basis, maybe on a every so often. If you're trying to figure out how to be the most healthy that you can, look at the variety so that you're getting all the nutrients that you would need. It's just a wonderful tool to have. Going into the health benefits, when you're looking at the nutrition facts label and you're trying to figure out, is this a good quality type of food? Because a lot of times people ask me, you're a dietitian, what's the best type of bread? I'm not trying to sell any type of products. I'm not selling any type of anything. I want you to understand. So when you're looking at the back of a nutrition label, I want you to look at how to read that. And when it comes to grains, an important part is for the fiber, because the fiber is going to tell you how much. Is it going to be more processed, or is it going to be more whole grain? If it's over usually 2 grams, it's going to be more on that whole grain side. If it's less, then it's going to be a little bit more processed. As we see with this bowl of oatmeal, it's 5 grams per serving. So it is definitely a whole grain when it comes to oats. But our goal is not to consume too much, but moderate amount to a good amount of fiber throughout our day. So if we're having lots of fruits and vegetables, fantastic. We're doing a little bit more fast food and we're having a little bit more on the go kind of foods. Just remember, between 20 and 30 grams is the recommendation for fiber. And so if you have somebody in your house that maybe they don't eat as consistently, I know for people with Alzheimer's or dementia, I've seen this in my own family with my grandma, they don't have as much of an appetite. And that's okay. Just maybe help them along a little bit so they don't have to have diarrhea or constipation. Maybe they may need a supplement like Benefiber or some type of Metamucil that may help them with a little bit more soluble fiber to keep their bowels regulated really well. But remember, as we talked about in the first class, fiber is important. But if you don't have the hydration with it, it's almost like just sandpaper going through your organs, and it's just not as comfortable, and it can become a lot more constipating. So make sure that we get a lot of hydration. I know everybody always wants to demonize cereal. There's nothing like, try to get the best quality cereal and the whole grains that you can, but make sure to have the hydrating fluid as well with it, so that you're even having a glass of water with it would be a good thing. So in our normal days, between 6 and 8 ounces is going to be fantastic. If you are more active, then you may want to have more of that, maybe 6 to 8 ounces. Um, I apologize, 6 to 8 ounces before and after an exercise. But throughout the whole day, we want to have 6 to 8 servings of this. This is just specifically for the fiber itself, but I realized that I misspoke that. We want to have closer to 64 ounces or more of fluid in a day. Now, there are many benefits to making sure that we get a good amount of grains in our diet. One of the great things is because it's more whole grains, it satisfies us more, so we don't have to eat as much, and so we are able to stabilize our weight a little bit better. As well, it does help us to be able to just feel more satisfied. I know a lot of people struggle with weight, and so they want to not have to feel super hungry when they're trying to lose weight, and there's ways to be able to eat that and play with it, and we'll talk at the very end. The last section of this is all about how to be able to play with the energy density so you can get less calories but feel more satisfied. And a big benefit of our whole grains is it's great for our heart. Again, that soluble fiber is fantastic to be able to help us in our heart. But not just that, we are able to get many vitamins and minerals, and the antioxidants can be great for prevention of cancer, as well as any type of things like in our GI system, as we just get a lot of great benefits to grains. So don't just exclude those out of your diet and think, I have to go on the keto diet or the Atkins diet to be able to become healthy. Grains have an amazing benefit. Just making sure that we have this within moderate amount, 5 servings for females, 6 for men. When it comes to tipping for shop, wow, wow, that was completely dyslexic. Tips and tricks when we go shopping. The first one is don't be tricked by the color of the bread. Sometimes people think like color, then they feel the density and different things. Make sure to be able to look at the nutrition label if you're trying a new supplement or a new type of food, because they will always look a little different. And you want to make sure that what they have on the nutrition label is as accurate and close to as good as possible. Brown doesn't mean that it's going to be whole grain. They can use things like molasses to make it a little bit more brown, as well as giving fancy names because it's a marketing thing. We've all seen what fast food looked like on the marketing tools versus what reality looks like. So don't be mixed by what they are selling on the package, because sometimes that's not always the most accurate. So the best way to look at it, look at the first ingredient. If it says sugar or something that's like processed white flour, may not be the most ideal for the situation. I always say if you want to have white flour and you're going to have a sweet later on, you may want to have a croissant or like a dessert rather than having it in your whole grain. So try to get the best foods of the highest quality when you're eating your meals. And if you have a snack later on, you don't have to feel like you're cheating. You're just having a different portion of it. Again, you have your 5 grains. If half of them are whole grains, then you still got 2 more. Maybe if you have something sweet or something that can help in that section. Going into the second lesson, we talked a little bit about families being able to have good snacks and how to be able to have those throughout our diet. So the goal of this class was to help us to identify, why do we want a snack? What is the purpose of snacking? As well, what is a healthy snack versus not? We had a great discussion about this, and people had lots of questions about, is this a good snack? Is that a good snack? So feel free and check out both of those classes on the second section. And as well, learning how to be able to just take all the foods that we have in our lives and plan healthy snacks, because we tend to, if we don't plan them out, we tend to just go for the quickest and easiest and most convenient things: the crackers, the chips, the things that are a little bit more processed, maybe some nuts, the things that are more calorically dense, the candies. So those things can be, they're not bad, it's just we may not want to always turn to those. We may want to be able to have hummus with a little bit of carrots or some other thing that may be less calorically dense. So going into why do we want to be able to have a little bit more snacks in our diet? Snacking can help us that we're not going into a meal too hungry. Because if you are so hungry going into somewhere, you may overeat. And this can be a challenge because then if we overeat a lot, we start to gain weight and we're not comfortable. So we want to be able to have a sustained amount of energy throughout the day. And snacking can be a fantastic way. We can help us lose weight if we are not overeating. As well, I love it because it helps my mind. Glucose is the primary fuel source for our brain. If we're always consistently eating a form of glucose or sugars, whether it's through dairy, through grains, or we can get it for through other means like fruit. We can improve the quality of our capacity to be able to think and improve the way we function in our life just by having a good amount of our grains in our diet. So overall, this is just important for every single person in our family to just pay attention to how they are consuming foods. Remember, a meal is three components, a snack is usually about two components. So try to pair up things so that we're getting a good variety throughout our day. So big things with these are plan, timing, and balance because we sometimes have busy schedules. We want to try to balance out what we are eating and plan ahead so that we're not just grabbing whatever's most convenient. And our schedule is just always sometimes all over the place. Sometimes kids are running over to a sports game. Sometimes as we get older, we have business meetings. Whatever it is, work with your schedule so that you can make sure to do this appropriately. As well, we had a couple of really good snack tips that are, and you'll see a little bit of repetition because it was the second class on the grains, but planning ahead is always going to be a critical part to be able to help us to be able to be as healthy as possible. Because if we're just having to go after fast food all the time or quick grab and go foods from the convenience store, may not be the most optimal choice. So planning ahead can help us to be a little bit healthier with our snacks. And remember, it's not just one thing. It's not just beef jerky. It's not just chicken, but having a variety of blending those. So if you realize in the morning you just don't really care to eat vegetables, that's okay. Maybe have a little bit more fruit in the morning, but then as a snack you can have as like a small side salad with something else. Or you're just throwing those around and playing with them. But remember, you're trying to get a variety. Remember that first page where it showed all the different types of foods and how many we should try to get in a balanced day. As well, when it comes to sweets, we're not going to say avoid them altogether, but try to limit the amount that you eat. So if you're going to have a sweet like a piece of pie, that's okay. Pair it with something else that may be a little bit less calorically dense to be able to allow it to be a balance. I wouldn't recommend just saying like, oh, I had pie with Cool Whip. That's not like it's a dairy and a sweet. Like try to have a little bit more like maybe some fruit or something else with it so that you're not always getting high calorically dense foods, as well as limit the amount of processed sugars that we're consuming. The way to be able to fight with this is get a good variety. Variety is always an amazing way to be able to help satisfy our brain. If we're getting fruits and vegetables and we eat the same thing over and over and over, I've met people that just love their apples, but then after a while, they just don't want to eat anymore. If I got taught to always eat fried eggs and toast in the morning, after a while, you just don't want to eat those anymore. So, get a good variety within our diet can help out with getting our fiber intake. And as we shared in the first lesson, try to get at least half of your grains as whole grains can help with this as well. Going into step two, this one is going to be all about pairing foods together that make it more complete. So, like cereal is great because you have, and that would be a great snack. If you throw in a piece of fruit, now you got a complete meal. You throw in a boiled egg, now you got a meal. For this one would be a great little snack because you got a piece of fruit, you got some granola, and you got some yogurt. That could even almost be going into the realm of a meal, depending on how many calories. But in this one, it looks like it's a little shot glass, so it has that good amount. So look at the serving sizes to be able to try to not overdo the granola or any kind of highly calorie things like our nuts, but getting it as a variety will help us out. And remember, two components, pair those together and make it so that you can have fun with this. There are so many places where you can go on YouTube, you can go on Instagram or Pinterest, and you can just see like what are good snacks. And there's just a variety of them. There's no magical snack that's going to help you lose weight, but just have it as a variety can help out so much. And that's the end of class two. Going into a refresher course of our heart healthy meals, we talked about the big goals for this one was to help us understand again how to plan ahead so that when we go shopping or we prepare our kitchen, we can make more healthy meals. And I think this one's really important because it's really hard if we have the same situation and the same setup to be able to really plan ahead. Understanding just your basic knowledge of what food safety is. Because if we do things over and over, and we get sick or we have problems, we just want to make sure your food is staying as optimal as possible. As well, how to be able to plant a little bit more fruits and vegetables within our diet was a goal of this class. So the first step is planning ahead, right? We want to be able to do this because this saves us so much time. I know a lot of people will say, I can't eat healthy because it's more expensive. Sure, if you're comparing it to a McDonald's burger and it's only $1, what we want to do is we want to plan ahead. And if you plan and cook a lot more and you don't have to have somebody already prepackaged things, you can save quite a bit of money and time if you do it yourself and you do it efficiently. This can always sometimes backfire if you're trying to experiment. So sometimes there's the fun time and then there's more functional. My brother, I love my brother, and he ended up taking the time and making an amazing stew. He found some of the best recipes, the herbs and spices, and he ended up, it took him about an hour to shop for all the ingredients. He cut up all the vegetables. He then stirred it for about 4 hours. And he's like, I took about 6 hours to make this entire stew. And he consumed all of it with his two roommates in one sitting. And so he realized, wow, between the money and the time and making it for three people for one meal, he's like, that wasn't really worth my time. So it was very expensive, and the cost of time wasn't cost effective. But if he would have made a larger amount of it and they would have had it for the next maybe 20 meals, it would have been totally worth it. And so planning ahead can help with this type of situation. When it comes to heart healthy shopping, knowing what things have more sodium or more potassium can help out. So again, remember that if we have potassium, which is great, and we want more of that in our diet, helps with our heart, we want more fruits and vegetables. The more we can get them fresh or non-processed can help. You can still get the frozen ones. Those are great. They usually pick them right when they're fresh and they flash freeze them and they work out great. They have a lot of good nutritional value. Or you can do the cans. Just look for the ones that are a little bit less lower in the sodium and they have the good content for them. Make sure that your cans are within the expiration date as well. Make sure that the fresh fruits and vegetables that you consume, you don't just have good intentions, but you actually could eat them within an appropriate amount of time. I have found that those three varieties can help. But if you're only shopping organic or an all natural, sometimes they can go bad a lot faster. So if you, like in my family, berries tend to go bad really fast. So we found if we just throw those in the freezer, and then if we want to have them in a yogurt parfait, like we saw earlier, we can just throw them out, put the yogurt on there, and just make little cups, and it works out really, really well without them going bad. As well, just try to keep your sodium level within a moderate amount. Our body still needs a little bit of sodium. And so, a majority of the time, we'll talk a little bit about this later in the section on sodium. We want to try to have at least 2,300 or less. So, not at least, but it's less than 2,300. So, that's about a teaspoon of salt in a total day. If you have a heart condition, you're going to want to have less. And we'll talk a little bit more about that on another slide. When it comes to preparation, it's not just about the food itself, but it comes down to preparing what tools you have. And I know the most kind of important part of any kind of food service or even in the home is your refrigeration. Your refrigerator, as well as your freezer, if there's just a bunch of old stuff, maybe it's gone bad, clean it out. Help start from fresh. If you have good stuff in there, keep it fresh, but just always be making sure that everything is clean and dated so you know how long you have to be able to use it. As well, making sure that when you actually cook food, if you have leftovers or you need to be able to have like serving spoons, or you have the tools that you need to be able to enjoy the meal itself. And as well, just organize your cupboard. I did this for my sister and it helped out so much. Make it easy for the little kids to have easy access to good, healthy snacks. If your family is a little bit more, okay, I see an open bag of chips, I'm just going to binge on those and I'm just going to keep eating them till they're gone, or have a huge thing of popcorn. Portion out those things that are a little bit more calorically dense so that you're not eating so much. So the kids, they will eat as much as what's ever in the bag. Well, if you have little Ziploc bags that are the portion sizes, that can help in the pantry. So just little tips and tricks that can be a little bit more helpful for you. As well, getting the right tools for the job is so important. I know people that love making their own pasta, but if it takes you hours upon hours to make pasta, maybe it not be the right tool. If you want to be able to have something like a crock pot and a stew, maybe having something that is the right tool to cook it and keep it going for a long period of time may be more ideal. So just make it as efficient as possible for your family and for yourself. And as well, when it comes to our heart, there's healthy cooking methods, and then there's maybe less healthy methods. If I throw a lot of butter into here, Crisco, and then I'm stir frying it, or maybe I'm frying these up in general, maybe not be the most ideal. If I throw a little bit of olive oil or spray pan, that may be a little bit less oil, a little bit more healthy on the monosaturated fats, maybe a little bit more beneficial for us. So what about baking? Or even on the next slide is about fish. What about trying a sous vide where you're cooking in water and then you just grill it? Outside grills are fantastic. Using the oven can be a great way to be able to use less oil and to cook it in a little bit more of a fresh and healthy way. But don't be afraid to prepare beforehand and conveniently prepare a certain amount to make it as easy as possible for your family. These little Ziploc bags were similar to things that I've seen my cousin do, where she'll prepare all the foods beforehand, then she'll freeze them, and all she has to do is let them thaw on a tray in the fridge at the lower side, so it doesn't liquid drip onto it, and then it's easy for you to just cook and make it as convenient as possible. And by teaching yourself, you teach your kids, you teach your parents, you teach everybody, whoever you are. This can be helpful for every single person of the family. But when it comes to food safety, especially this is very, very important. If you have something that's already cooked and it's ready to go or it just needs to be heated up, keep those up higher so that you're not having anything like raw meat dripping onto things like yogurt. Because I know a lot of times we have our nice cooler sections, but they're not like liquids tight. So if you have a piece of chicken and you think it's sealed up, but it really just drips, and then it drips onto something that the kids are going to be grabbing, like string cheese or something, that may be a way that they may get sick. And so we want to make sure that they stay as healthy as possible, or even our loved ones or our seniors. So making sure to label things helps out a lot, but also making sure that they're at the certain level. So we have cooked things and ready to go to eat versus the foods that are a little less, or raw foods are closer to the bottom. As well, temperature is very, very important. Bacteria loves to grow between 40 and 140. So what we want to do is make sure that our refrigerators are below 38 degrees, as well as our freezers are below zero. So we want to make sure that we have things that are frozen, staying frozen. Things that are not, that are in the fridge, make sure your thermometer is as high as possible so that because heat rises, you want to make sure that the warmest place in your fridge is staying cold enough to keep everything okay. I know some refrigerators, they start to freeze on the top. Other ones have a little bit more challenges. So this is just a safety thing. If you start to notice that you have frozen vegetables in your freezer and they're starting to become a huge block instead of the individual pieces, maybe there's points where people are not closing the freezer, or it's not freezing enough, or it's opening, thawing, and then shutting. So you just want to prevent freezer burn and food losing its nutritional content, as well as making you sick. And going into section 4, so we do have 9 sections. What I'll do is I'll go through the first 5, and we'll take a little bit of not a recess, but a little bit of a break so that we can get a little bit of water and kind of reset our minds. So going into this section was all about herbs and spices and identifying them. So we first want to understand, just maybe going back and understanding what they look like, but then also understanding how do we use these. So instead of always having to use salt to be able to affect our blood pressure, we can use herbs to be able to be a little bit more of a healthy choice. And again, plan, plan, plan. If you want to cook Italian food, cook Italian food. If you want to cook Mexican food, cook Mexican food. But planning ahead will help you with that, because then you can pick the right things for the right job. Remember, there are many different parts of the plant, and I'm very excited for the new Dig In program that we're going to be teaching on Friday nights, starting on June 25th. We'll be talking, the first class is all about what different parts of the plant are used for. But in herbs, they have parts of the plant that are the seeds. Some of them are the stems, some of them are the roots, and other parts are the leaves or the flowers themselves. So each one will have a different flavor. You can't just go outside and eat part of your tree. It may not taste very good. So we want to know what is the most efficacious and most beneficial part of a plant, and what's the purpose of it. Because if I just mix the wrong herb with the wrong food, it may not taste very good, but you can also make it taste amazing. So definitely things that can be helpful planning ahead. Great part about using herbs is we're not having to use as much salt or other flavorings that may affect our blood pressure. So just remember, get as much of a variety as you can, but use the herbs to be able to give more flavor. I love when things taste good. Even though, yes, I have a little bit of an impaired sense of taste and smell, herbs are one that you can, it's aromatherapy. It's just absolutely fantastic. And it makes certain meals taste so much better. As well, there's so many great benefits. We had a question earlier on about, is there a certain fruit or vegetable that have so many of the good blood pressure medicine like vitamins, like our potassium, our magnesium, and our calcium? Well, there's not one that has all of them because calcium is great from dairy, magnesium is great from nuts and legumes and seeds, but our potassium is usually from our fruits and vegetables. But there was one section where I saw they had a little bit of a benefit of all of them, and it was from herbs. So please, 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 like if you're going to use anything, have a good supply of herbs that can help because they have vitamins, they have minerals, they have antioxidants. If you're going to invest in a multivitamin or herbs, I'd probably say go for herbs because it's going to make things taste better. A multivitamin, it's kind of just chalky. So we don't really ever chew on those. And it is just great because it's a low sodium option that can help our bodies out. Remember, we want to use them within an appropriate amount of time. You can do fresh herbs and they will last for a couple of days, all the way up to dried herbs can last a year or two. But these are not things that you want to pass on to your posterity so that they lose their aroma, they break down after a period of time. They don't have as many of the nutrients. So you want to use them within the optimal time frame. So if you have them starting to go soggy in your fridge, you just throw them into things, may not be ideal. So again, similar to fruits and vegetables, use them within the appropriate time frame. If they're going to be dried, dry them out and do the appropriate needs, or get them within their season. A couple of the tips and tricks when it comes to actually cooking with herbs in your table, we have this broken down into cold versus hot section. When it comes to the cold foods, it takes a little bit of time because usually if you heat things up, the aroma, the flavors, and the smell of these herbs gets released. So when you dice them up or you put them in and stir fry them into something cold, like I believe that we showed, like an onion dip and having a little bit of dill, you want to mix it up and you want to let it set for about an hour or more. That way it can diffuse amongst whatever the food item is, and then you stir it up right before you serve it, and it's fantastic. However, when its heat is added, you don't want to cook it too long or let it simmer because it can become really, it breaks down the aroma and it's not as flavorful. So, right at the very end, the last 5 minutes, as you're finishing up a nice stir fry or a wonderful meal, maybe you're doing a freezer meal and you're pulling it out of the fridge, throw in a little bit of fresh herbs, stir fry it up together, and serve it to the family. It'll be absolutely fantastic according to what you're cooking. And again, make sure that the herbs are within season so that you're getting the optimal vitamins and minerals from them. So we went into a great little discussion about how well do we actually know our herbs. So when we make different types of foods, we want different types of herbs, and we went and identified specifically what did they look like and what kind of foods do we cook them with. So this one's more of like a pad thai dish and more of an Asian descent. So basil is absolutely fantastic, not just as a garnish, but stirred right within and cooked in with it. It has a nice fresh flavor. Antioxidants are absolutely fantastic. When it comes to more of a stir fry, we think of more like things like fajitas and different things. We can add wonderful things to be able to add, like there's garlic, but there's also things like ginger. Ginger is absolutely fantastic for like settling our stomach. So if you've already had maybe an upset stomach that day, this can be a great tool. We think of things like ginger beer have a great way to settle our stomach. Well, you can do that with raw ginger itself. You just cook it in a little bit and it's absolutely fantastic. When it comes to more of like a Latin descent, or we maybe want to have a little bit more salsa or guacamole, we can add in a little bit of cilantro. And those are the ones that have the little finger projections. You can pull those out and stir fry them up, just dice them up a little bit better. And it has such a wonderful flavor and it has more of that Latin American flavor palette. We go into more of our French or Italian themes, they absolutely love garlic. A little goes a long way. This is a great antioxidant, and you can stir fry it in. You can make it into the sauce. You can make it into our spaghetti noodles, depending on how strong you want it. You can cook it earlier on instead of the last 5 minutes, and then it won't be as strong, and your date won't think that you're completely repulsed. Or when your mom tries to give the little kid a kiss at the end of the night, they're not repulsed by the smell of the garlic. Or you can just throw it in right at the end and you just don't care and you just love the flavor of garlic. There's many ways to be able to enjoy this into your meals. As well, one of my personal favorites is rosemary. I have a story of rosemary. When I went to Italy, I went to Tuscany and I had this amazing piece of steak. And I thought that it had been smoked with some kind of special type of wood or something happened. And he just said that they were a vineyard and they used their fresh oil, olive oil, and they used some fresh herbs like rosemary and they marinated the meat in it and then they cooked it on the grill and it just had such a great flavor. So rosemary is fantastic when it comes to things like your meats or your proteins to be able to help them give a little bit more flavor, but also some veggies are also really, really tasty. Chives and green onions are absolutely fantastic within soups. So instead of making things super salty in your broth, as you try to cut out a little bit of the salt, this is a great way to be able to have a little bit more flavor, but also those vitamins and minerals that you may be lacking. And then going a little bit more into soups, we'll talk a little bit more next about salt and how those are important because when we're looking, everything seems like it's processed. Even some of the things like Gatorades will have a little bit more sodium because it's an electrolyte. And it is important if we are doing a lot of physical activity. But if we get too much, it can be problematic for our heart and we swell up. Or if we get too little, it can be problematic and we get cramps. So we want to have a balance of this in our diet. So identifying where we actually get sodium is a really helpful tool. And knowing this, then we can also help kind of start to have a little bit better diet through reducing our blood pressure because we are eating within a moderate amount of sodium and not over consuming it. And so in the class, we went a lot more into individual packages and what things we kind of had guesses of what things might be higher or lower in salt. And so we delved deeper into this subject as well. So remember blood pressure, like a lot of people, we had questions on, well, is there a certain type of salt that's better for you or healthier for you? And remember when we had that class, really within just 1 or 2 percentages of it is relatively all the same amount of sodium. So it's right around 38%. Some have 36, some are up at 39, but relatively around the same amount of sodium per salt. And so there's not a particular one that's like healthier or not. There's some of them that have more minerals and more vitamins. Some of them have more flavor. I know that some people use these for ketchup and it has more flavor. So just be aware of how much you're actually consuming and what is an appropriate amount. And I believe that we talked about there being 150 milligrams to 200 milligrams is going to be usually on the lower end. And we want to try to keep it below that per serving. So if you're having 3 components, if you start to have maybe 300 to 800 milligrams of salt in a certain meal, and now you have 3 meals throughout our day, we're at 1800 already. Then if you have it in a snack and you have salted nuts and trail mix, you might be going over pretty easily. So just be aware of that. You don't want to be overdoing the amount of salt. And remember, this can be hidden in certain places like our cheeses or salted butters or ways that have salted nuts. Some salt can be hidden in so many different things. And if it's in a package, usually it's preserved by either sugar or salt. So just be aware of that. If you're looking at it and you're like, it's good, it doesn't have any sugar. The packagings always do an amazing job to be able to try to get us to sell on it, whether it's, oh, it has no artificial flavoring or no artificial colors, but it has a lot of other stuff. So just make sure to look at them. If you're trying something new, I always encourage looking at something new, but making sure you know what you're eating. So we had a great discussion on where is the largest amount of salt we get in our diets so that we can prevent overdoing this. And a majority of it, about 75% of all Americans' diets, when they looked at thousands of people, was primarily from processed foods. So like if we are getting things that have already been prepared for us, or if we're eating out at a restaurant, they always want you to be as satisfied as possible. So if you ever notice your weight on the scale tends to go up after you go and have a wonderful steak, well, that might be because you have a little bit more salt in your diet and you're holding on to a little bit more blood and more water retention. So this can be an effect of having a little extra salt. So if you realize I eat a salty steak or French fries and then my feet are swelling the next day, a lot of times if we go out and we go camping, the elevation change as well. Sometimes those foods that we eat when we're camping have more salt. So our feet tend to swell. So just be aware, swelling of our feet is edema that can affect our heart. So we don't want to have that consistently be happening in our lives. As well, there are great minerals, and this was our discussion on is there any magical supplement? Herbs are wonderful for all of these. And remember potassium, so we get it from our fruits and vegetables, Our magnesium is going to be going from beans and legumes, and calcium is going to be from more of our dairy. So if we don't get that, make sure to try to, if you're more lactose intolerant, get a supplement for calcium and vitamin D to keep our bones nice and strong. But these are wonderful, wonderful things to be able to get a good variety. Again, we discussed in a previous class that you can get these in multiple different other ways. And like seaweed can get it, but how much seaweed do we really eat if we're eating sushi or if we're having in our culture? So remember that a variety of these are going to be the best. So overall, a balanced meal is the most effective to be able to help keep us as healthy as possible. A big one is if you already have a heart condition, if doctors downplayed that and they said, oh, I have hypertension, I have high blood pressure, I'm just taking a pill for that. That means you have a chronic health condition. So please, 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 I want to keep you around as long as possible, keep you as healthy as possible so you don't have to go to the hospital. Lower the amount of sodium you have, especially if you're having things like edema or swelling of your feet. Try to get below 1500 so that you are not over consuming salt and you're having that problem on your heart. So this is a very, very important part if you already have high blood pressure. Then there's also what style of life or diet is maybe beneficial when it comes to helping regulate blood pressure. Well, they've done a lot of research on this. There's a few diets that doctors actually or dietitians actually recommend. One of these is called the DASH diet, and it's specifically a diet helping us reduce our sodium and getting a better quality diet. And it's essentially everything that we teach in these classes, getting more fruits and vegetables, having whole grains, half of your meals, having more lean meats, more fruits and vegetables, having a good oil instead of fats or solid fats. When you have dairy, make sure to have low fat dairy, and just doing overall everything that we're talking about when it comes to portion sizes. As well, we had a great hearty discussion on other ways to be able to help lower our blood pressure. And we talked about exercise and getting that within moderate amount. We'll talk more about that after the break. As well, we can just limit the amount of salt we add to our foods. If we're preparing more foods at home, we won't get as much. So we want to make sure to get a moderate amount. But remember, salt is they add iodine to it in table salt, and that can help with our thyroid. A lot of people in Nevada tend to have a lot of thyroid issues. I don't know if there's a correlation there with maybe cutting out and having more sea salt and not get the iodine salt, or if we have too much of it. We do have a lot of hyper and hypothyroidism as well as Hashimoto's. And so there's a lot of people that struggle with getting the appropriate amount. May be a correlation there. Who knows? We'll only new research in the future will be able to find that out. As well, trying to get more fresh fruits and vegetables as well as dairy and nuts, the more processed foods that we consume. If you're going to have trail mix, make your own trail mix with no added salt to your nuts, and that'll help out a ton. As well, just remember the amount that you want to consume is less than a teaspoon. So not the big spoon, but the little tiny spoon, that's going to be the amount of salt that you want and throughout the whole day. All right, let's go ahead and take a little bit of a break. It is about close to 3:52 right now, so we'll come back at 3:57. All right. Well, let's go ahead and finish up with the last few sections. I believe that we have 5 more lectures that were lessons that we're just going to go ahead and review from previous classes. And so let's get into the fun part. Now that we had a little bit of a chance to stretch and break, we'll talk a little bit more about increasing our physical activity within our lifestyle. So we do this in a safe way, but we want to know, okay, well, what are the benefits of being more physically active? What is a way to do it nice and safe? And how do we increase this in an understandable way? Now, this section has a lot of forms that we recommended and we sent those out. So if you didn't get those and you would like those, feel free and grab my email at the very end. And if you message me, I'm happy to send those to you after you've watched all of the videos, and we'll make sure that you can get those tools to help you. And a very important one, especially if we're getting older or here in Nevada, it gets really hot. Stay as well hydrated as possible. And we will talk all about each one of these now. So going into how does it help us with our it, physical exercise helps us to slow our aging process. Well, how does this do this? Well, if we are always training our mind to be able to do something different, we are now correcting, if we're doing physical activity, we're using our muscles to be able to use our neurological system, and we are increasing that pathway better and better. So our body has a faster reaction time. This can help us with things like working on the computer or being on the phone, or even being able to be self sufficient when it comes to driving. Very helpful. As well, it retrains our muscles and keeps our muscle mass so we stay nice and stable. Because a lot of times as we get older, one of the biggest things that causes a lot of mortality is falling as we get over the age of 65. So we want to just prevent those as much as possible, and keeping active can help prevent that. As well as just keeping us as self sufficient as possible. This is either as a little kid being able to lift something heavy, or as an adult, as you get older, I know a lot of women have a hard time opening up jars. And if you're having a struggle with just being able to open that up by yourself, there are amazing ways to be able to strengthen our wrists, strengthen our grip, and strengthen our body so we can be as self sufficient as possible. And by strengthening our muscles, they have to connect to something. And I always think of like our bones have to resist the pull of muscles. And so we thicken our bones by strengthening our muscles. And it's a great way to be able to prevent osteoporosis or osteopenia and breaking things if we fall or hurt ourselves. As well, we just generally feel better when we exercise. This helps us not only like emotionally, but as a social thing. We do a lot of fun things like dancing or going out and playing golf or even playing with the grandkids. There's a way to be able to have that social connection, and it makes us feel better when we are connected with other people. Even if you're an introverted person and you've loved COVID and being isolated away from everybody, having masks, humans do much better as we are able to be together with one another. As well, weight management. The more we're able to keep active and keep our muscles toned, well, this is a great way to be able to keep our weight within a healthy weight range. As well as improving the quality of our sleep. We exercise and we move all that old energy. It's almost like when we exercise, we're draining the gasoline out of our tank, then we get to refill it back up. Exercise and sleep go hand in hand to be able to help improve the quality of our sleep, and we sleep longer and deeper when we're able to move our body. As well, it helps so much with mental health. Exercise and getting a good variety of fruits and vegetables, good variety of foods in general, does wonders when it comes to mental health. I can testify of this because it has helped me maintain a series of depression. When I was a kid, I struggled with depression and I went through a series of medications, and I was able to use nutrition and exercise to wean off of with safe professionals off of medication so that I was able to maintain without depression medicine. So mental health is all very much impacted by nutrition and exercise. So it's just a great tool to be able to have with us. But if we've been inactive for a long period of time and maybe you have some health conditions, talk to a specialist, go to a physical therapist, go to a doctor, and just figure out what is a safe way to be able to slowly start approaching this and see what you can tolerate. If your body doesn't do well with weight bearing exercises, there's other ways to be able to get movement. You can go swimming, but talk to those professionals because they can give us recommendations how to start slow. If you are used to being sitting in a couch, there's nothing wrong with starting with a little bit of a walker and working your way up. instead of just going and trying to be 20 years old again and running like crazy. Little kids have to, even babies have to start with somewhere and they crawl. Then they learn how to flip over. Then they learn how to slowly get to their knees and they get that stability. As we get older, we start to lose some of those things. So if you start practicing that, it can help quite a bit. It's amazing. I always just recommend so many times to my clients, if you struggle with just rolling around when you're on my table, maybe practice just rolling, or if you have a hard time getting up off the ground, maybe do that as an exercise, a nice slow way. Little kids can do it all the time. Why wouldn't it be a great exercise for us? And as well, remember there are 4 types of exercise. Some people just say, I hate exercise. Well, remember fruits and vegetables. If you always say, I hate fruits, I hate vegetables, there's a lot of variety out there. And so for exercise, there are 4 different ways we can stay healthy. The first one we always think of is the endurance. When we get on a bicycle and run, go for a ride with our family, if we go for a run or a walk, maybe we're going swimming. These are all endurance exercises that help our heart and help our lungs, and we start breathing a little bit harder. It's a great way to get the blood flow to the ends of the body. But there's also things like strengthening exercises that are fantastic for helping prevent a lot of pain. Because life is just a nice active lifestyle, is great for maintaining our weight. However, if we get imbalances, like I always think of like a new mother who's now holding on to her baby and she has to breastfeed or she's just cradling the baby and have a rock, well, they tend to favor one side over the other. And now we have an imbalance in our body. We become a little bit more painful on one side, or our hands can go numb because we were rolled forward. So, exercise, getting bands, or even simple weights can do wonders when it comes to stabilizing our muscles and keeping us balanced, preventing pain, and just keeping us as healthy as possible. I love it. As well, people don't always think about it, but things like balancing exercises, things like slow movement like Tai Chi, lifting your leg up. All of these, we have little sheets to be able to help with ideas of how to do it. Even things like yoga are absolutely fantastic because by strengthening and stabilizing your muscles, you can prevent falling. That's so great, so helpful. And I love this, and this is the recommendation from a medical massage therapist who deals with people all the time. Whatever you use that day, try to stretch it out. So if you are sitting in an office and you're at a desk for 8 hours a day, get up and make sure to stretch out your hips. If your hands are hunched over and you're working on the keyboard, make sure to stretch out your wrists so that you don't get any kind of golfer's elbow or tennis elbow. If you are going to be a truck driver and you're sitting for a long period of time, make sure to stretch out your back, strengthen your core. But doing the stretches that your body's using on a regular basis, even if you're stationary, are going to be helpful to be able to keep you as healthy as possible for as long as possible. And hydration. I have found this is a hard one for a lot of people to be able to stay as well hydrated as possible. And so I just want to go back to be able to just emphasize the 64 ounces is a very important part of keeping everything regulated. I just always think if you drink a lot of water, you can flush everything out. If you want to wash your clothes in soda or tea or coffee, or even better yet, let's just throw in a bunch of alcohol in there. You might be able to sterilize or clean it a little bit, but your body really loves it. In the ideal situation, drinking water would be the most ideal thing. If you can get sugar-free sodas, or just try to limit the amount of processed sugars, like even in fruit juices that you can, and try to stay as well hydrated. If you are going to choose to drink things that are going to be more of a diuretic, such as our morning tea or coffee, or drinking alcohol or sodas or soft drinks, try to make sure to stay hydrated and drink more fluid to compensate for the diuretic effects of those so your body stays as optimally hydrated as possible. And going into a little bit more of a deeper concept is more about supplements and how do we be aware of supplements, of do we need them or what? And so we talk a little bit about how do you define what a supplement is, as well as what is the different qualities, what's in them, how do I read a nutrition label, as well, is there anything that I should be concerned about? Not only is it the value of it, but the quality of it. And how do I know who the credible sources are that are going to help me, and what are just the fake claims that it's a marketing tool to be able to get you to buy the product. So a dietary supplement comes in many different forms. It could be a pill, it could be a gel, it could be a powder. Anything that it comes to is an oral format that usually is going to be either a vitamin, it can be a mineral, it can be an herbal supplement, or it can be something that can be more of an enzyme that may be coming from a body, like a thyroid enzyme or maybe if you have lactose enzymes, there's different types of enzymes as well as amino acids. So anything that's broken down into very simple supplement that's used to be able to be not a meal, that is going to be a supplement. So now that we know, one of the tricks ways that I found is look at your nutrition label. If it is saying nutrition facts, this is going to be a food. This is going to be a supplement. But versus supplements or a drug, they will have a supplement facts and they be very, very careful on what they say when it comes to the serving size, but also the daily value. Because sometimes, like even in this one, this is vitamin D and it has all these other things that are in it, but it has 500% of how much you would need to be able to have in 2 tablets. This might be necessary for some people, maybe it's not in others. So if you're starting to take a supplement, always check your blood work and just make sure you're not overtaxing your liver and your kidneys because you're taking supplements. Um, Certain supplements, I always think of ADEC is vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and vitamin K are all fat soluble vitamins. Those all get stored in our liver. Once we get an optimal amount, it's just storing it as extra fat. So we don't want to over toxify our liver and get things like fatty liver disease. So we want to get the appropriate amount that we need. And if it has a value next to it, so this daily value number, if it's 100%, that means that we have found through research and through so many years of feeding people who are maybe in a coma or on the table, every human needs a certain amount of vitamins and minerals. If you notice on the label that it has this little star next to it, so you see it on there, that MSM, and it has a little star, that means that there's no proven effect that you absolutely need this supplement and there's a certain amount of it in your diet. It may be helpful, but there's not a necessary need for it. So be aware of how much you're getting. If you have a multivitamin, be careful if you're already taking another supplement. If you get a multivitamin, it usually has 100% of everything that you would need. So don't overtax your body and just pay for extra urine or hurt your liver. As well, be careful of marketing ploys because they will always claim, oh, we do this and we do that. But remember at the very bottom, if they have little asterisks next to them, they have to state they have not been proven that this can be something that can either diagnose, it can treat, it can cure, or fix any type of disease. So just be careful because they can promise the world, but they don't always deliver. And the FDA's job is not to go through and make sure like this is a quality product, but they remove things that have a negative claim. So if they say this helps with this, and then somebody finds out it's a recall and there's actually shards of glass in it and it's hurting people, the FDA will go in and make sure to get rid of it. But supplements and dietary supplements are just the unregulated type of food that they can kind of say whatever they want and they just have to put this little disclaimer at the bottom. So if it's not able to help with certain things, you just have to be very careful. Look at the research. If you think that a probiotics can help, look at what it says. Go to a dietitian to be able to help out. As well, a lot of people ask me, well, would I benefit from a certain type of dietary supplement? And there are certain things that we talked about in the previous class is when you have certain conditions, this could be beneficial. So like if you have a chronic health disease and you're trying to make sure to have optimal health, if you have things like cancer, heart disease, diabetes, any other chronic health condition, this might be a good recommendation to have a multivitamin. If you are tend to skip meals, maybe you're not getting all the vitamins because you're not eating what you're supposed to, or you're skipping a certain type of meal. So like you don't have fruits, you don't have dairy. This might be a good time to be able to have a good multivitamin. Or if you tend to take things in that may be more of a poison or can leach out some of the vitamins from our body, be careful if you are already taking in alcohol or smoking, these can leach out some of those things. So you want to have it within a moderate amount, but you want to make sure to take a vitamin with it. But certain vitamins can be negative. So there's been research that shows smoking, and then you take vitamin C can actually aggravate more cancer. So don't always just take vitamins because you take in other substance. As well, if you do a specialized type of diet, I know today a lot of college students are trying these fad diets like vegan and keto and intermittent fasting and vegetarian. If you're going to be on one of these diets or any kind of specialty type of diet, try to take a multivitamin because you may not be getting all the vitamins you're needing, no matter how good you are. If I was a dietitian and I know nutrition really, really well, if I was doing a vegetarian or vegan diet, I would absolutely be taking a multivitamin because there's certain things like vitamin B12 that you cannot get from plant sources alone. So take a multivitamin with minerals. This will help out a lot. But if you don't have any of these conditions, would you benefit from it? I mean, it won't hurt you, but you don't always necessarily need it because I have found doctors love to be able to sometimes subscribe certain things and prescribe them. Check with them and just if you're taking a lot and you feel like you're getting filled up by pills, talk to them, help them understand it. If they are very just always pushing pills, talk to a dietitian. Let's help you simplify it so that you're getting what you need without overdoing it and hurting your body. But the optimal situation that you can do is getting a variety. Get it like we talked about in the previous sections and earlier in this class, is getting it through your fruits and vegetables, through whole grains, through dairy, so that you don't have to always depend upon a supplement. You will never really be able to overdose on vitamin A through your diet unless it's a supplement. Everything in a supplement is so strong and concentrated, you can overdo it, but in foods, very rarely. But you can get exactly what you need through a variety. So remember, the plate method is there to help you get the optimal amount of level. Even if you're eating things like hot dogs for your protein, even if it's not the best type of cheese, that's okay. Get a variety and your body will balance what it needs. If you have something like you've now had part of your intestines removed and you have an absorption issue, you may want to have that vitamin to be able to keep it balanced. But remember, just because there's like a good sailing technique and they have protein shakes or they're supplementing and they're you see it on the ads on the TV. If you have a balanced meal and you take in some of these supplements, it's just extra calories. So it's going to make you gain weight. So be careful of that. These supplements and these snacks are not meant to be a meal replacement in most cases. So you want to be able to have it within moderation. If you tend to skip meals, they can help out, but they aren't supposed to be a meal replacement. So if you wanted to use it to help supplement what you're missing, that can be a very, very helpful thing. Now, in the class that we first talked about, we had you check out a food item. So like I have my Gatorade bottle and I have my nutrition facts. Check and see, is this a food or is this a supplement? And then is there anything when it comes to the percentages, how much of the percentages is there in this item? Is there more than what you need? Is there any of them that have a little asterisks that really have some kind of fancy things that don't really have any recommendations? Um, as well, is there any ingredients that are not absolutely necessary for your body? Are you getting in extra stuff? And is there any claims that they're saying this does this thing, but it's not approved by the FDA? Because there are certain things when we look at them, you have to be careful. There are certain companies that are checking and making sure the quality is there, but generally, FDA is always taking things off of the menu per se, or they yell at companies to be able to fix the products if they are not up to standard or they're causing harm. But there are companies that are out there that usually give the seal of approval if they have done the research and saw this supplement is up to the highest standards. That is helpful for us to be able to know, so we're not just throwing away our money. The next section for 8 of 9, so we have 2 more. So hang in there. We're almost done, just about 15 more minutes, is going into our dietary fats. And so lipids, or an oil-based or fat-based, there are some important factors to it. So we talk about what are the health concerns, as well as what are the health benefits. How do we get these in our diet in the most appropriate way, in a healthy way? And what is the amount we should be consuming within our diet? So there is a lot of misconceptions out there in the world. And so what we did at the very beginning of this class is we talked a lot about, okay, well, what are the true statements versus untrue statements? So the first question that we had, or the statement was, diets high in some fats increase your risk of cardiovascular disease and cancers. And the answer to that is true, that if we are not consuming the best of the quality of fats, this can affect us quite a bit in our heart and also our digestive system or any other cancer in our body. So there's certain fats that are not good, but doesn't mean that every kind is, because that goes into the second section of, is this true or false? Eating fats causes me to gain weight. And if I eat fats, I'm now going to be raising my cholesterol. Well, this isn't necessarily true. This statement is almost true enough that like it kind of gets people caught up, but the correct statement for it is, if I eat too many calories, I don't care if it's in fat, I don't care if it's in sugar, but too many calories in general will cause a person to gain weight. That's where fat usually comes from, is you're consuming too many of a calorie of some kind, and it's causing your body to store that. But it's the wrong kind of fats that will cause your cholesterol to go up. But it's not just any type of fats. So, what are the healthier kinds of fats? We can get these from foods, and there's so many different varieties that we can get them from. And so, just remember there are better choices than others. The first one is, if you're getting it from a processed source, there are liquids at room temperature. And so, that is like things like vegetable oils or canola oils. The gold standard, sometimes you'll hear from the Mediterranean diet, would be olive oil or extra virgin olive oil. But you can also get oils from other places. I know there's a big fad and push of avocados, but there's also in nuts and seeds and all and olives themselves, not just olive oil. And a really important one is fish. We try to have at least 2 servings in a week. But remember, if there is an oil or a fat that's solid at room temperature, it's probably not going to be the most ideal one. So we want to have something at liquid temperature, is going to be liquid at room temperature, is going to be the most ideal when it comes to monosaturated fats. And the amount. So, what is the things that we want to try to either limit or avoid to be able to help protect our body and our heart from high cholesterol? Is the amount of saturated fats. So, saturated fats are coming from our animal products, things like our dairy. So, if they're even produced from an animal, or if they have like things like eggs, or if we have them from meats and chicken, it comes from the skins, it comes from the fat that we see on our steaks. We can get ground beef high in fat or low in fat as well. Trans fats are going to be the ones that we want to just be very, very careful with. These are going to be more when they take the oils and the fats and they superheat them and they break down those molecules, they become a double edged sword where they take out the good fats from our body and they increase the bad fats. So it kind of hurts us in a double way. This is one of the few foods that we just say minimalize to none if possible. So, how do we replace a little bit more of the saturated fats with good fats or monosaturated or polysaturated fats? Well, the first way is get the solid fats that you have, replace them with a little bit of oil. So, go from butter to oil is a helpful choice. If you're doing a protein option, try not to always just eat steak or chicken. I know people want to demonize steak, and that's not necessary. Just get a variety of it. If you're going to be doing fish, fish is absolutely fantastic. It has a great source of oil and it's great for omega 3s. Make sure that you're getting it twice a week can be great. It's just the amount of how much are we eating, between 4 and 6 ounces, depending on the size of our body. As well, when we have chicken and meat, try to trim off the fat as much as possible. If we see our chicken legs, try to cut off that skin that's extra on there. If you have more of steak and protein, you may want to just help your grandparent trim off that extra fat, or the kids, maybe when you're cutting the meat, you just cut off a little extra fat. That's just simple ways to be able to decrease the amount of sodium, there are extra saturated fats that are in our diet. Now, pairing one of the lectures that we had earlier to now, we're talking about oils. Well, what about mixing some of the herbs with our oils? So now we have a good oil and we have good flavor. We get the antioxidants. There are so many great benefits to be able to help lubricate our body. So a lot of times people think, I want to lose weight, I'm just going to go on a low fat diet. That's not the case. We still need essential oils because oil is great as a cellular level. We need oil as a lipid bilayer to be able to protect us and keep our bodies safe. If we go so low on that, it starts to affect our cells. Think of our skin. If you put your hand in water, your hand isn't just absorbing the water because there is a lipid layer and it protects us and it keeps our skin healthy. Even things like lotions can protect that as well. But just know that there are good sources and there's not so good sources. You can get them from processed like oils, or you can get them from meats or like fish, or from avocados or nuts. So just know that there's a good variety and there's also challenging ones. The final lecture, we have just a few more minutes, is going to be the new concept that was introduced by the Penn State University from Dr. Rolls. And this is going to be about energy density. And you just simply look at this picture about fruits and vegetables are a lot lighter versus maybe a burger and wheat, white flour is a little bit more dense. So going into understanding this concept, we gave a description of what is energy density, and we have a great visual about the grapes versus raisins a little bit later on, identifying what types of foods this is in, as well as how do we get a little bit more fruits and vegetables again in our diet. It seems like there's a common pattern there, and making a plan. If anybody's going to get tired of things, it's fruits and vegetables and plans, right? But they tend to help out as much as possible. So, what is energy density? So, of a potato like this, it would just be just over one, just as a baked potato itself. It would be about 180 grams or 180 calories and about 160 grams. And so it'll be just 1.1 when it comes to energy density. So, energy density is when we take the calories over the volume, so the weight. So, we take grams, so calories over grams. So, if it's closer to one or less, it's going to be a low energy density food. If it's between one and two, it's mid range. And if it's higher than two or double the amount of calories to weight, then it's going to be higher and it's going to be a high density type of food. So for a plain potato, this can be 1.1 and it's very low or just on the moderate to low level. However, you add a little bit of butter to it and just add just a tablespoon of butter. Now that jumps up to almost 1.9 energy density. If you add maybe take off the butter and add 2 tablespoons of sour cream, that drops down to mid range to 1.4. So the idea is calories over weight. So we try to figure out how can we play with this so that we get more weight for calories, then we're more satisfied, where we feel a little bit more satiated rather than feeling hungry after we finish a meal. So it's all a matter of playing with this. So if we're looking at more things like oatmeal and it has a lot more water that swells up, there's not as many calories per weight. So that would be closer to the one or even less. Fruits are fantastic because they have more fruit, more water as well as more fiber. So they're going to be on the lower end versus something like a donut where it has oil, it's been fried, it has white flour as well as sugar on top. That's probably closer to the 6 to 7 range for the amount of calories per weight as well. So, how do we understand what ingredients are in low energy dense foods? Well, think of grapes, think of fruits. We have a little bit of fiber, we have water, but then we also can fluff up a little bit more air to make it a little bit lighter as well. So, like things like shakes, you can add a little bit more fluff to it. And a great visual to understand high density versus low density is the idea of grapes that have a lot of water in them versus having a little bit of raisins that has a lot more. It's all the water's been taken out, all the sugar and the fiber is still there, but it's just a lot more dense. So you can have, if you want to have the same amount of calories, it would be a quarter cup of raisins for a whole cup of grapes. So it's a matter of what would feel more satisfying to you. Would you get more satisfaction out of grapes or raisins? So Dr. Roll had an amazing study, and I highly, highly recommend just getting a chance to checking out and understanding a little bit more about energy density. And she did it when it comes to the study of chickens and rice, where she served a different type of casserole where people on average ate a certain amount, and usually around 400 calories, just shy. It's like 397 calories to be satisfied. Then on another day, on the same group of people, they altered it and they added 10 ounces of water and they took the same ingredients and made it into a soup. And it was amazing because people ended up eating about 100 calories less. So, about a quarter of the amount of calories needed to be satisfied in soup because they added water versus what was in the rice and chicken and rice. So, we could cut out a simple amount of calories just simply by adding more hydration. And that was a simple thing that she was just mind boggled that you can satisfy people more by less energy density. Another way that she did this, and it was fantastic, was she did a pasta and vegetable kind of a stir fry, similar to what we see in the image here, but she played with the amount of pasta to the amount of vegetables. And she was able to find out that she could alter with the same satisfaction or even more satisfied with more vegetables and that she could cut out about 40% of the calories. I think it was 30% of the calories from having more pasta versus little vegetables, more vegetables, and a little bit of pasta. She could alter that variation, and satisfaction would remain the same or even higher with the vegetables by about 30% of the calories. So if you're needing to reduce your calories in a nice, easy way, this is a fantastic choice. And she found this is so helpful. So remembering not just a matter of avoiding certain types of foods like crackers, chips, and candy, but it's a matter of where do you want to stay and eat more of. The fruits, the vegetables, the broths, those types of things can be more satisfying in more amounts versus then if we move the next level up, still in the low range, are whole grains, having cereals, having low fat milk, having things that are going to be a little bit more fiber based. Then as we go up, we have our meats and our cheeses, having a little bit more mixed dressings, has a little bit more oil and breads. Those are going to be in the moderate range. So we just want to maybe stay more in the range of how many do we have as a balance and little on the processed sugars. But again, there's no magical combo. Hopefully my voice remains there, but we get a variety because a variety helps us to become more satiated on an easier basis. Think of the first time you went to your favorite restaurant and that first meal that you had was just absolutely incredible. Then the next time you went, and then maybe after 50 times, now you're less sensitized. It's maybe it's good and you have that memory, but now you need an appetizer. Now you need a dessert with it. You're not as satiated. So the trick is having a chance to have a variety and listen to what our body is telling us. Many times going in and just stopping and waiting before a meal happens, we have the plates down. Some people in their cultures, they pray or they think about it or they give thanks. Think about how are you feeling? Are you going into this meal extra hungry because you didn't have any snacks beforehand? Has it been 6 hours since you ate last? Or have you eaten appropriately and now you're going into the meal appropriately hungry so you don't have to overeat? And listen to what your body is telling you so you eat appropriately. It is, if I can help anybody with anything, it's that concept of the buffet mentality or the cruise ship mentality of, oh, I went and did this and now I gained 10 pounds over the weekend. Why do we need to overeat? Listen to your body and go in and get a good variety. You already have the variety there, but you don't have to eat every single thing. It's not going anywhere. Have a variety of what you need, but eat within your appropriate levels. So you're not overeating, but you're not undereating either. As well, keeping a journal. This can help you initially just to be able to listen to your body of how often am I eating, but am I eating because I'm hungry or am I listening to my internal cues or is it more I'm doing it because of emotions? And I'll tell you what, just this is a free tool that you could just start tracking yourself and it's amazing what you'll learn. This is the way that I figured out what foods I could eat and what foods I couldn't at certain times of the day to figure out what would spur my mental health and keeping you as healthy as possible. And overall, we just want to say thank you so much for participating in the 6 week program. And again, if you haven't had a chance to finish up the survey, please take that post assessment so that we can get funded and continue to provide this as a free service for other people. As well, we have an exciting new program coming up in just a week and a half on June 25th. And every Friday this summer, we are going to be offering the Dig In program. And of course, it says the nutrition classes, but really the focus is it's just going to be an amazing community event. We're going to have fun games. We're going to have raffles. We're going to have free prizes. You're going to be able to come in and just see a garden from where the food actually comes from and actually get your hands dirty. We're going to pull out plants. We're going to be able to show what food comes from. And then as a nutrition, I'm going to try to keep it as entertaining as possible, but also learn why, like, where are we getting it from? How does it impact us? And have a great time as a community. And that starts from 6 to 8 o'clock every Friday night coming up on June 25th and every night. And here's the location at 7550 Hillview Drive out near Golden Valley in Reno, Nevada. So if you have any questions, feel free and just shoot us a text or an email. You can easily get hold of me. But again, special thank you to Penn State University for all of their help. And again, this is my name. I am Brandon Borum, a registered dietitian in the area. And here's a good phone number for me. You can text me if you have questions or want to get involved in a little bit more, learn more about nutrition. But thank you again for everybody being part of this. And I hope everybody has a fantastic week and stay as healthy as possible.